Hey everybody, I'm Nicole.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sarah, and together we're the co-founders of Whale Tales, a living library of cetacean stories.
And today we have a special guest, woohoo!
So sit back and enjoy as we dive right in.
Hello! Welcome to July. Well, the end of July, but still, how exciting. We are very excited. Today we have a super special guest. I wrote quest here but in the notes, but it's actually guest. Trevor Branch.
We're on a quest.
We're on a quest to talk to Trevor. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we had a amazing conversation with Trevor. Trevor is a professor at the University of Washington who, and we copied this from his Blue Sky bio, runs models and synthesizes data, loves R graphics, and does research on the status of marine fisheries, fishing quotas, and blue whales.
Woo!
Yeah.
We talked to Trevor all about blue whales and actually all kinds of whales and how they are all ruled by orcas? Question mark. It was a really awesome conversation and we can't wait for all of you to hear it. So let's dive in.
Now we're here with Trevor Branch, who I'm sure has a much more official title than blue whale scientist, but that's what we're going to be calling him today. So we're super excited. We haven't had a blue whale scientist on before, so we're going to dig into his research and also, spoiler alert, nerd out a lot about blue whales. And I'm pretty excited about it. So Trevor, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's my favorite thing to nerd out about blue whales.
Oh,
so
well, you're in the right spot. Do you want to give us a quick overview, like maybe your actual title and what you're doing and stuff like that?
Sure. I'm a professor at the University of Washington in the School of Aquatic and Fisheries Sciences. And I split my research partly on fisheries and partly on whales. I do a lot of blue whale research. I'm a modeler and I'm a data analyst and a synthesist. Maybe you could call me a data scientist, or I'm not quite sure. It's a little confusing, but I basically take data other people have collected and try and figure out new things about it, or figure out what the status of whale populations is, how depleted they are. I try and calculate where one population might be versus another population, try and figure out how many catches were taken from each population, and all sorts of things like that. So a lot of my work is sitting in front of a computer, building models, gathering data, like reading hundreds of thousands of papers, analyzing stuff, writing computer code. My background is formally I'm a computer scientist and a zoologist, which is a pretty unusual combination.
Not for this podcast, obviously.
Yes, no. I mean, I didn't go into academia, but I have an undergrad in marine biology and ecology. So now I work as a software engineer and a manager at a software company. So,
wow. Well, you'd be perfect for my field. You're the kind of person I look for.
There you go, then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of my work is fisheries stock assessment. How many fish can you catch sustainably and not harm the population would be a classic example of what people I train do.
Wow. Amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So how did you get into blue whales then? If you were, did you just were like, let's start at the top and work our way down? How did that kind of happen?
Like most scientists, if the thing you end up working on is not what you started working on, and you end up working on things you find interesting and fascinating that you can contribute towards the science of. And in my case, I was between jobs. I had spent some time in London, and then I had, just more than a year to figure out what to do with my life, and went back to Cape Town where I grew up. And my previous advisor said, well, I have this job, if you're interested. It's a big database of whale sightings from at the Antarctic, and we're trying to figure out how many whales there are based on all this database of whale sightings from systematic surveys. And so I spent that time figuring out how many blue whales and humpback whales and minke whales and various other species there were from this big set of surveys that were done in the Antarctic over more than 30 years. They've circled the Antarctic 3 times. So that was my first foray into blue whales. And then when I got to the University of Washington to do my PhD in Seattle, I needed a class project to do. for a course. And I was like, well, I'll just do a project on the status of Antarctic blue whales and try and piece everything together. And so I wrote a paper as a class project that worked out the status of Antarctic blue whales over time, which is a really fascinating story because they were so depleted by whaling and they still haven't come anywhere close to recovering. But I was able to show that they're at least increasing over time, which nobody else had shown before. So that was my sort of foray into blue whale research. And like everything else, if you're a good scientist and you enjoy finding out new stuff, every time you do something, you find all these unanswered questions, and then you move on to the next one, and then the next one, and then someone asks you an interesting question and you try and answer that, and eventually you look back and you've written 20 papers on blue whales.
Yeah. I feel like
That's
we have
amazing.
that with the podcast. This podcast, we start with the conversation and end with like 8 more questions. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
But such a great story. I mean, so many of our listeners write to us to tell us about how either they're planning on studying marine biology or they are studying marine biology. And then I would say like an equal number, like, and then sort of that big old question of like, once I finish school, whatever level of schooling they're in, how do I take that next step? And I think what I expect will really resonate with a lot of our listeners, Trevor, is just that you can finding the funding to go out and do field research can be quite challenging. And so that doesn't need to be a hindrance to getting started in this field, that there is enough data out there to get started with, like you said, just a class project that can turn into, now you're on a podcast as the blue whale guy.
Yeah, I feel like a bit of a fraud because I don't do my own field work and go out in the field and collect stuff. But I do collaborate with a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
And I like to feel that I bring some value added to the collaborations, and that most people that work in the field don't really want to spend their time in front of a computer analyzing data.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like if I can come in and offer that service and pull together what a lot of people are doing and make sense of a bigger pattern, that tends to be of interest to a lot of people. So
I am sure you are every researcher's favorite person. Be like, oh, you know who wants to play with this data I collected? Trevor.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
So what was the most recent paper that you either published or are working on and can talk about?
Sure. So I'm trying to write a book on blue whales, and I say trying to write because it's a bit like asking a graduate student, have you finished your PhD? When are you going to finish? So, I've learned that when someone says they're writing a book, it's kind of rude to ask them when they're going to finish.
Got it. We will not
and
ask
kind of
that as a follow-up.
But I've done a lot of reading about blue whales, and I was in the middle of reading about blue whales as widely as I could, all the papers, all the books I could find. And I came across a book that, just as an aside, was talking about killer whales. And they said, killer whales, they can't hear very well below 1,500 hertz, which seems like, well, what difference does that make? What does that mean? And because I knew so much about blue whales, I know that blue whales don't call above 100 hertz. So the low end of killer whale hearing is way above the high end of blue whale calling. So just like, we can't hear some sounds because they're too low or they're too high. And as you get older, that range narrows.
Yeah.
So you get worse at hearing both. It turns out killer whales are very bad at hearing low sounds. And this matters because killer whales are the only things that eat and attack and kill blue whales. There's nothing else in the ocean except us. We're obviously very historically good at doing that.
Yep.
Yes, unfortunately.
And so it just suddenly struck me like, wait a minute, maybe this is an adaptation for blue whales where they can go and sing as loudly as they want and they can't be heard by killer whales. So the killer whales can't just home in on the song and go from one blue whale to the next as they're singing. And this sparked a truly, for me, absolutely fascinating story that I'd love to tell on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Which is that, and this has all the elements of good science, which is every time you think you have the solution, it turns out to be more complicated and more interesting.
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds like whales.
So I started with, well, okay, blue whales, they can't be heard by killer whales. Well, let's make sure that that book was correct about the 1500 hertz threshold. So I went and did some research and found some papers and contacted some people that did those papers. And it turns out to be, that the killer whales can maybe hear it down to 100 hertz. Some of them. So they did these experiments on captive killer whales. And they played them sounds, and if they made a response, they'd give them a reward, and then they'd make the sound deeper and deeper and deeper. And at every level, they would not just play a sound at a particular frequency, they would also play it louder and louder and louder until the killer whale could hear it. Because it turns out the deeper you go, the louder the sound has to be for you to be able to hear it. So it would totally make sense. Like if you're a human and you're listening to a very, very high or very, very low sound, it has to be loud for you to hear it. If it's right in the middle of your hearing range, it doesn't have to be very loud. And killer whales are the same. And so there's some individuals that can't hear below 1500, and there are others that, and none of them can hear below 100. Okay, so you sort of get this range of the deeper it is, the louder it has to be. And so now it's a kind of a more complicated story about, well, it's not just the frequency that matters, it's how loud it is. And how loud it is depends how far away the calling whale is. And, getting more complicated. But I thought I had the story, which is, okay, they can't hear blue whales. They can't hear fin whales. Both of them call very low. I'm going to find out about all the other whale species. And I start researching, and I'm like, what frequency do sei whales call at? What about Bruder's whales? What about, humpbacks and, and minke whales and so on. And as I'm doing this, I suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute, some of these do call super low and some of them call kind of high. And so my hypothesis that baleen whales call at deep frequencies, so killer whales can't hear them, doesn't really seem to work out. So I was like, oh, well, that was an interesting waste of my time. But and then I thought, wait a minute, there is a pattern that the baleen whales that call mainly at low frequencies are the baleen whales that are streamlined and they swim fast. And if they're attacked by killer whales, they flee. So they're the flight species. And this is a well-known division of baleen whales.
Yeah.
And then the baleen whales that are kind of bulky and slow swimming, maneuverable, and if they're attacked by killer whales, they fight back. That group of baleen whales, they all call high enough to be heard by killer whales. So there's this division. The flight species call low and the fight species call high. And so I was like, okay, I've solved it. It's fight versus flight. And that's super simple. And I can, move on and publish my idea and it'll get... And then as I gathered more and more data from all the different populations of all these different species, it got more complicated because there were some flight species that do call at higher frequency and some fight species that do not call at higher frequency. So, okay, so this is more complicated. So I start digging into it more and more and more, and I realize that these exceptions also call really, really quietly. Mm. So, of course, if you call quietly and you just whisper, then you can't be heard, or at least you can't be heard from very far away. And so the classic example of this is Antarctic minke whales, which make this really, really weird sound. They make this bioduck sound. There are other minke species that make a Star Wars sound, yeah, or a Boing, or, all the minke whales make these really weird sounds. And almost none of them could be identified as minke whales making those sounds. It was really, really hard for people to figure out what was making these occasional, really, really weird sounds. And it turns out that's because they don't call very often. Mm. And so, I have a colleague who went, Brian Miller, who went down to the Antarctic, and he put down hydrophones at a bunch of places, a big survey all the way down from Australia through the Antarctic, and he was putting them down and listening and putting them down and listening and putting them down and listening and trying to track whale calls. And something like 90% of the hydrophones he put down, he could hear Antarctic blue whales singing. All right. But only 4 of the hydrophones were their minke whale calls.
Oh. So quiet and sneaky.
Okay. And the kicker is that in the Antarctic, where he was doing this research, there are 50 times more minke whales than blue whales.
Oh.
Whoa.
Okay.
So he was hearing 60 times more blue whale calls from a population that is 1/50th the size of the minke whale population.
Wow.
All right. And so minke whales in the Antarctic, where there are tons of killer whales, there are 20,000 killer whales in the Antarctic, are very, very, very quiet. They basically don't make any songs at all.
That's fascinating.
Sneaky minkies instead of stinky minkies.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know enough about about minke whales. Do they travel to then go mate? So that we don't know why they sing, even though they don't hardly vocalize at all. But we don't know enough about them to know why they're vocalizing.
Yeah, so I mean, the general thought is that all of the baleen whales, it's the males that do the songs, the repeated songs, and presumably they're doing it to attract females.
Yeah,
that's the general assumption. For something like a minke, that's one of the flight species, and blue whales and fin whales and sei whales, they're streamlined, they swim fast. When they finish with their feeding season in the Antarctic, where it's all with Antarctic krill, there's tons of food. When that summer feeding season ends, they go elsewhere.
Mystery.
And they appear to kind of disperse across the oceans. So the classic one is Antarctic blue whales, where if you put a hydrophone anywhere in the southern hemisphere, you'll hear in midwinter, you'll hear Antarctic blue whale song somewhere close by. And there are only like 3,000 or 4,000 Antarctic blue whales in the whole of the southern hemisphere. Okay,
but
so
like
you can do the calculation. It basically means there is a blue whale every few hundred kilometers calling loudly so that you can hear it.
I want someone to make us that map.
Exactly.
That has
blue whales?
Has every one of the 4,000 blue whales like perfectly spatially.
Sounds like a lot of ruler work.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what we do have is we do have hydrophones in all sorts of places.
Yeah.
And I have plotted that. And everywhere you put a hydrophone down, you can hear Antarctic blue whales.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And so the thought is that they disperse. They're the flight species. They disperse in the open ocean. They don't want to be cramped up against against the land. So if they get attacked, they have somewhere to flee to. And because they do that, because they're dispersed, they don't want to be in aggregations very much. Then they have to call super loudly, super monotonously. Yeah. And a deep call also helps make the call go further, be heard further away. Yeah. And by calling low, they avoid the problem of killer whales just homing in like the females do on each one off the other, and just finding them and any associated females and calves and so on. So that's my idea for the flight species.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Now, the fight species, they make calls that are higher, that can be heard. And if you do a plot that kind of analyzes everything together and says, how far away could you hear the calls? At about 1 kilometer away, you can't hear any of the flight species, but you can hear all of the fight species at a kilometer away.
Yeah.
So, and I figure a kilometer is, like if you're an orca and you're a kilometer away, you can probably hear the whales blowing and making sounds and driving.
You can hear them anyways, And a kilometer for a killer whale isn't really very far.
I assume they can hear them from other cues anyway. And so the idea I have is that these fight species, they want to be close to the shore in aggregations. The classically gray whales going to the lagoons in Mexico to breed and mate. They're in shallow water, they're close to the shore, they're in big aggregations. if a killer whale comes in, there's sort of group defense. So humpbacks do that a lot, where humpbacks will come to the aid of other whale species and fight back against killer whales and smack them with their tails and flippers and make their life miserable. And so the fight species are going to the same place every year to be in a big aggregation. They're not hiding from killer whales. The killer whales, if they wanted to attack them, they would know exactly where they were.
Yeah.
But these aggregations are in places where there's no food. So there's no food for the humpbacks. There's no krill to eat. They're fasting all winter long. And there's no food for the killer whales. There are no seals or sea lions or harbor seals. There's very few other things there for them to feast on that's their main prey. And so that's how the fight species handle the situation. They basically make it really, really time consuming to attack them by defending themselves. And the flight species make it really, really annoying to attack them because it would take hours to chase them down. Yeah. So both those things help.
That's so cool.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Has your research looked at the effects of human noise pollution on any of this as it moves ahead?
I haven't looked specifically at that. I know people have looked at that. And of course, the more noise there is, most of it's from shipping, but also seismic surveys searching for oil and gas are super, super, super loud. Obviously, that has some impact on them, on whales being able to communicate. And, there are various theories about how, well, if you're in a loud room, you're going to talk more loudly. Mm-hmm. So maybe whales do the same thing in a loud environment. Maybe they call more often or more loudly or at different frequencies or things like that. But it's not something I've done directly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Out
of the way of those dastardly killer whales.
Yeah, so as I've gone through science is like this. You start with one idea and you're like, oh, this is very interesting. And then you start thinking, well, is this a more general idea? Mm-hmm. Can I generalize this?
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, the talk I gave on Monday at Science on Tap was just entitled Whales Fear Orcas, Changing Their Songs, Migration and Growth. And just the idea that, it's way more than just their songs that could be affected by orcas. These baleen whales, they grow incredibly fast, both during the pregnancy and in the first 7 months or so after birth when they're nursing. They grow way faster than any other mammal species during pregnancy. So most mammal species, if you're an elephant or a rhino or a hippo or a giraffe, you get big by having a long gestation period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You grow at exactly the same rate as a mouse, but mice have a really, really short pregnancy and elephants have a 22-month-long pregnancy. So if you extrapolate out, you would think that whales growing at the same rate as all other mammals would have, I don't know, like a 6-year-long
4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't. Their pregnancy is 10 months or 11 months. Mm-hmm. So the growth rate during pregnancy is way faster. Orders, not orders of magnitude, but multiple times faster than any other mammal species. And all the baleen whales are like that.
Huh.
So maybe that's an adaptation to...
Yeah, me either.
You escape predation by having a big baby.
Yeah, I guess that's true. They would came out smaller. They would just be little snacks.
And then
for killer whales.
Once you're born, you grow as fast as you can so that you reach almost adult size as soon as possible. And so baleen whales have these unbelievably fast growing calves.
Yeah. And well, some of that might also be about their need or the migration patterns, right? They need to be ready to migrate by the time their mom needs food.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So exactly.
So if you think about, well, why did they migrate?
Yeah, also true.
Why don't they just stay in the same place where all the food is? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's orcas too.
Mm. Yep.
Right, they're all migrating to places where orcas are less abundant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in summer they're feeding in places where orcas are abundant. In winter they're moving to places where orcas are not abundant, having their calves. And then by the time they come back, the calves are either big or they've been completely weaned, depending on whether they're fight or flight species.
Yeah.
And so blue whale gets born at 7 meters.
Just bonkers.
Which is bigger than almost bigger than an orca.
Yeah.
And by 7 months old, they're 16 meters long. So at 7 months old, they're bigger than a humpback whale.
That's. I don't think I've ever thought about it like that. That's
just that growth curve is.
I can't even think about.
And it's unbelievably expensive for the mother. I mean, they're producing this milk that's 50% fat. Their blubber is just getting drained of all the fat that's going into the calf. To have this calf put on an unbelievable amount of weight, and they're growing several inches per day. They're putting on 80 kilograms a day in weight. They're growing in size and in bulk.
Yeah.
And so by the time they're 7 months old and they wean, they're pretty big enough to escape an attacking orca.
Yeah.
And the orcas are mainly focusing on the calves of these big baleen whales. Very, very seldom do you ever see scars that on an adult that's been sighted before that has these tooth marks that look like rake marks on the sides or the tails.
Yeah.
Very seldom do you see one ever get new rake marks after it's been sighted. So it seems that they're only attacked as calves.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Even if I
so migration, how fast you grow, how you sing, where you decide to go, could all be driven by orcas.
Yeah, they rule the world.
They rule the world. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to think about because, like, we as humans and with human-centered minds, we think a lot about the effect that we've had on the land, certainly, but on the world as a whole, and how human behavior over the last however many thousands of years, but especially since colonization really took off and industrialization took off after that, the impact that we've had on species. In the grand scheme of evolution, the human impact on whether it's the waters or the lands or the earth as a whole is a blip in the radar compared to how long orcas as a predator have been acting on, from an evolutionary force perspective, the oceans. And I have never thought about that before this conversation.
Yeah,
it's true.
When you start thinking about it, it's unbelievable. It's like, could this be true?
Yeah.
So I'm also slightly skeptical that I'm right.
Well, that's a mark of a great researcher.
Yes, very true.
Yes. Good place to be.
And other people that have come up with ideas of how orcas affect things like why do baleen whales migrate? And there's a paper on that from a bunch of years ago, and it received a lot of responses saying, we just don't think this is true at all. And there was a lot of debate and discussion. And I think over time, the community has come to realize that, this is a pretty plausible explanation for why they do migrate. And nothing ever explains everything, but it seems reasonable. Yeah.
I remember John Ford giving a talk at UBC that was, I can't remember if it was at the symposium or just a one-off. And that was the first time I'd heard that idea of orca predation affecting just the way that the kind of two groups of baleen whales, the shape of them, like you're talking about the fight and the flight, the sort of like the fight back ones, the rorquals especially, having been shaped by evolutionary pressure from killer whales. And I was like,
it's crazy. It's a much more fascinating chicken egg situation than chicken and the egg. Like, how did this happen? Who started this? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I was at one conference where Jim Estes, who had proposed an even more controversial theory about the effect of killer whales on cascading sequential collapses of different marine mammal species, had gathered a whole bunch of people together. And one of the speakers was the sort of deep archaeology type, paleontology type person. And he was like, well, baleen whales evolved much longer before orcas came along, and there were lots and lots of baleen whale species, I forget the exact dates, but 15, 20 million years ago. And then orcas evolved, and a whole bunch of those species went extinct.
Just went away.
He didn't say we can't prove it was orcas that made them all go extinct, but he was like, well, who knows?
Something happened. Yep.
Certainly something happened. Yeah, the two key papers for me are the one by Corcoran and Connors that talks about migration being why do baleen whales migrate, and then the other paper by John Ford and Randy Reeves in 2008 on the fight versus flight. So I was kind of primed to think about these two categories of species when I was thinking about their songs. That at least I had something to frame it in, and it all made sense. But the idea that you can have like a group of whales that's like all bulky and knobbly and slow swimming and so on and so forth, and that makes them perfectly adapted to fight back if they're attacked. And another group that swims away as fast as possible, and they all look sleek and slim and perfectly streamlined, and they can swim super, super fast, and they can escape, presumably quite easily. And that shape and streamlining and everything all is perfectly adapted to fleeing. Just is I don't know, that's really cool. It's remarkable.
It works out nicely that it works. And it's just like, oh, it's another thing that they've known all along that we didn't know.
Yeah. And when I was doing this paper on the song, I had several people, including one of my students, Zoe Rand, who said to me, it's probably got more to do with the size of the whale determining how deeply they sing. Big whales can sing deeper than small whales, and that probably explains a lot of it. And so I arranged all the whale species by size, and it suddenly struck me that all of the fight species were kind of in the middle size group.
Yeah.
None of them are super small like minke whales or, the really small ones, and none of them are super big like blue or fin whales. Mm-hmm. And it struck me that to be maneuverable and fight back, you have to be big enough that you can fight back and damage the attacking killer whale, but small enough that you're maneuverable. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a sweet spot of big enough to fight back, small enough to be maneuverable, where you could take the strategy.
I don't think anyone would call a blue whale maneuverable.
They're flexible.
Yeah, they're flexible.
Yes.
Highly flexible.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone would call a minke whale big enough to fight back.
No.
Against a killer whale.
For sure. Minke whale strategy is to have lots of calves, and if you encounter a killer whale, just say, "So long, good luck. I'm leaving you."
Oh, no. I'm not going to get too attached.
Not going to get too attached. I gave you this amazing vocalization noise. Isn't that enough? Bye.
Don't call too loudly. Or often.
Oh, poor minkies. That's really amazing and just blowing my mind. And now again, we have like so many more questions of just so many things.
Yeah. So once you start thinking about it, it's like.
And this is why you haven't finished your book, because you just keep getting more questions and more questions. I would never be able to finish a book like that either, because it's just opens it up, and now you're writing 8 books. Just like that's.
And also you start thinking, well, maybe I should be publishing some papers on this, because the book takes me 8 years. Maybe I should quickly get some of these things out as papers now.
Before, not that it becomes outdated, but before it,
before somebody else
figures it out.
Scoops it up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All of you researchers listening here, you also know that Trevor's the one who told us.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, when you look at minke whales, they're really, really interesting, because I'll tell you the blue whale story in a moment, but the minke whale story is even more extreme. So these surveys, remember I was telling you about the surveys that I did analyze for abundance estimates. So part of those surveys were actually designed to count how many minke whales there were in the Antarctic, because at the time they were still whaling minke whales. They were trying to figure out what a sustainable catch limit should be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There hadn't been a moratorium in place, which happened in 1986. The survey started in 1978. And in all the years they did these surveys, where they cited, thousands of minke whales, they've almost never seen a single mother-calf pair.
Oh.
So, and if you go and ask anyone who works on minke whales in summer, almost nobody has ever sighted a minke whale calf.
That's so weird.
But the whalers, when they caught the minke whales, they were required by law to record if they were pregnant or not. Mm-hmm. And the pregnancy rates for minke whales are like 80%.
Jeez.
So, almost every female minke whale gives birth almost every year, maybe every second year at most. They're highly, fecund. They produce lots of calves, presumably, but you never see the calves. And so probably what's happening is they're down in the Antarctic, they're feeding like crazy, they're putting on as much weight as they can, building their blubber reserves. Summer ends, the Antarctic krill goes back under the ice, and they all kind of disperse, probably not going that far north, but they kind of disperse into more temperate waters. That's when they give birth. That's when they mate. That's when they nurse. And the nursing period for minke whales is pretty quite short compared to other baleen whales. It's probably just a few months, maybe 4 or 5 months from the limited stuff that I've read up on this. So they give birth, they nurse for 4 or 5 months, and they're just like, good luck, buddy, you're on your own. And then they head back to the Antarctic to feed again. So that means all the whales you see in the Antarctic are mothers separated from the calves.
Yeah, right.
Calves are independent living already. They've been kicked out of the house. They're on their own. They have to face killer whales, which one group of killer whales in the Antarctic specializes on feeding on minke whales.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot for them.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of minke whales down there, and there are a lot of killer whales down there. So
yeah. That just goes against like all the classic whale, especially baleen whale mom things that you think about and see of like mainly like blue whales and humpbacks, of course, and gray whales just like traveling with their calves and helping them along the way. And minke whales are like, bye.
Yeah. Yeah. And humpbacks are a bit different because, again, it's the fight versus flight, which again is shaped by reaction to killer whales, as I said. So think of humpbacks. Now, humpbacks, they're not able to just, as soon as they finish feeding and they leave, immediately have a calf, because then they'd be swimming to their winter grounds by themselves with a tiny little calf, and they could be attacked.
Yeah.
So what humpbacks do is they swim. They complete their migration. They end up in some aggregation area, like off Hawaii, and then they give birth. So once the whole aggregation of humpbacks is together, then they all start giving birth. So they're giving birth quite a bit later than the flight species. Maybe, I don't know, 1-2 months later. And that means that they haven't finished weaning their calf when they get back to the
time to go.
Summer feeding areas. So, when you end up, so they can track them. Oh, this mother has a calf in Hawaii. They swim back to Glacier Bay, or they swim to all different places in summer to feed. And then they can see, oh, here's the same mother, still has a calf. The calf survived that migration period, or the calf didn't survive. And the number of calves that doesn't make it is actually quite high for humpbacks in the North Pacific. So adult humpbacks, their survival rate's like 96%, somewhere around there, like in the high 90s. The calves are more like in the 80s for survival, just from birth to reaching the feeding grounds. And we don't know why they don't survive. It might be food is not good. It might be that they're getting eaten by killer whales on the way. It's not a speculation, but certainly mortality is quite high in that period.
There's a lot of secret killer whales between Hawaii and here, as we talked about last episode. We don't know what's going on out there. They're out there eating things.
Yeah. And the offshore killer whales are probably more feeding on sharks and rays and so on. But yeah, there are quite a few mammal-eating killer whales, and they can migrate very, very long distances to find good places to eat things. I mean, so one group of mammal-eating killer whales certainly goes down to California. They follow the gray whale migration. They nab gray whale calves as they go past. Another group of orcas, maybe it's the same group, ends up at Unimak Pass in the Aleutian Islands, and as the gray whales migrate through this narrow pass, they kill gray whales going through there. So gray whales are certainly a species that, although they're a fight species, they're kind of small for a fight species, and they seem to get targeted a lot by killer whales.
That pass in the Aleutian Islands, I remember reading about that, but I had forgotten what it's called. That's where it's shallow, right? So because one of the biggest sort of forces working against killer whales and preying on larger baleen whales is the rate at which that baleen whale carcass is going to sink, and how deep a killer whale can dive, and how much they can sort of like replenish their energy stores from feeding before the carcass is too deep. And I feel like that's the place near the Aleutian Islands where they found this very narrow pass that the gray whales sort of like have to take, or at least have have, evolutionarily speaking, like always taken to get to their feeding grounds. And the killer whales can kind of like wait in the pass, and it's shallow enough that even when the gray whale does sink, the killer whales can still dive to it, so they can eat a lot more of the body. If it's not there, it's somewhere else in the Arctic area. That I was like, oh, they're so smart. They're so smart.
It sounds like a really scary part of a Disney movie.
Yeah. And part of the way that maybe gray whales operate is they just have so many calves that they kind of swamp the killer whales, and so yes, some get eaten, but the rest make it through.
Yeah,
like salmon.
Also, the plan for minke whales is just predator swamping.
Yeah.
But yeah, gray whales are very interesting as well because they're a fight species, but they don't call very high. They're sort of somewhat anomalous for all the fight species. They don't call very high, and they don't call very loudly, and they don't call very often. So they seem to be doing more of a stealth mode. And in some places where they're able to listen to their calls as they migrate north, some of them can go around the coast, follow the coast where it's shallow, and others will cut across from one headland to another across the bay. And when they cut across the bay, they make way fewer song calls than if they go close to shore. So maybe it's somewhat anecdotal in that it's just one study, but maybe there are adaptations where if you're in an area that has lots of killer whales or you fear predation, then you don't call as much. And if you're in an area where you don't think there are very many, you call much more. Yeah. The other interesting thing is this, okay, is that when you look at the flight species and the fight species and you look at the songs they make, they're dramatically different types of songs. The caricature is the difference between a blue whale and a humpback whale. Blue whales, Antarctic blue whales, are like wah 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 wah, for days. That's all they do. Same song. The whole population makes the same song. They sing all the time. Even in summer, they'll be singing sometimes, probably more during mating season than off season. And then humpbacks, they can have a song that lasts, 10, 20, 30 minutes that has dozens or 100 individual parts that are all different. And having produced the song once, then they repeat it. This incredible, intricate song they repeat again and again and again. But it's super, super long, super, super complicated, super complex. They have all these things that change from year to year, these cultural revolutions where a new sexy male humpback whale arrives in the population singing a completely different song from another population. And 2 years later, everybody in that population has changed to sing the sexy new song, which is completely different to what they were singing the year before or 2 years before. So there's a cultural revolution in their songs. And so my idea is that the fight species are all these aggregations that they're competing for females, not by attracting them by distance, hey, I'm the only one you can hear, come to me. They're attracting females by competing to see who can produce this intricate, beautiful song the best or sound the sexiest or something like that. So it's competition by, beautiful singing. Whereas the blue whales and fin whales and sei whales have much simpler, repeated, boring, they're
I'm here,
whatever you want to call it. And, and the females are like, okay, I guess I have to choose one of them.
Yep. This is the point.
Find the one that sings the loudest or the longest or, and that's the one that they go towards and find a mate. And if you look at other fight species, bowheads, right whales, bowheads are even more intricate. Bowheads are like the jazz singers.
Oh.
Each individual bowhead will have a different song.
Don't know anything about this.
And, so Kate Stafford has done a lot of work on this where she puts on a hydrophone and she listens to bowheads and baffin straight and so on. And there'll be like, 100 bowheads swimming past and 80 of them will be singing 80 different songs.
Wow. That's so crazy.
And then you put down the hydrophone the next year and there are 100 swimming past and there are 80 different songs.
Oh my gosh.
And none of those songs are the same songs as the previous year. Like they're riffing. They're just making stuff up as they go along. They're not trying to be somebody else. And so maybe with these fight species where there are lots of them together, they're competing by being, in the case of bowheads, by being unique. In the case of humpbacks, by being interesting and beautiful.
Yeah.
And so maybe again, this killer whales has shaped the way they sing.
That's
the more you look, the more interesting it gets.
Yeah, the more, more and more. We'll talk about this forever. Wow.
Oh man. But
one of the other papers that you had come out this year about blue whale calves and how we've never really seen them. Well, like we have, but be born. We've never really seen them be born. I think 2 ever births. Is that right?
A few actual births, only
births.
2 documented births. One in Saldanha Bay and one in Trincomalee Bay in Sri Lanka. Saldanha Bay is in South Africa. But this paper, I was having a long chat with Richard Sears, who's one of the people who knows more about blue whales than anybody in the world could possibly learn. There are just a few people that have kind of devoted their whole life to spending time with blue whales. You know, John Kellenbakidis would be another one in that category. And Richard said to me, I've been working in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, Eastern Canada for 45 years. And I see blue whales every year. We have them individually identified, photo ID, everything. And I've only seen, in those 45 years, 35 calves.
That's not a lot at all.
It's not even one a year. Nope.
Okay. And he's probably seen thousands.
Yeah, thousands
over the years. And he said, well, I just, I don't think they produce very many calves. I think the population's in dire straits. And this got me thinking about, well, is this true of other places too? And I started gathering data, and I discovered he's right. Almost nobody that works on blue whales sees calves very often. So the average is about 3% of all sightings are mother-calf pairs, which is very, very low when you think of the whaling data.
Yeah.
They appear to give birth every 2 to 3 years based on the pregnancy rates in the whaling data. So where are all those calves going if 1/3 to 1/2 of all the females give birth every single year? Shouldn't you see a ton of females with calves? And the explanation, again, comes down to this timing. So if you are feeding in an area with lots of killer whales, or you're worried about killer whale predation in the area you're feeding, you'll give birth straight after you leave, and you'll try and wean just before you come back. And you can get the timing to work just right, 7 months of nursing and 5 months of feeding per year, and a month or 2 to go to migrate there and back to wherever you're going in winter. And if you do that timing thing, it seems to work out. So everybody that works in the summer, which, let's face it, why would you work on blue whales in the winter when they're all dispersed in yucky places in bad weather? You're going to work on them in summer where they're feeding and they're more aggregated. You're more likely to see them. It's no fun to do an entire research project where you don't see your study animal. And so a lot of researchers work in the summer. They see them when they're aggregating, when they're feeding, and there aren't very many calves there. And then the few that do have studies in the winter see a fair amount more blue whale calves, about what you'd expect based on pregnancy rates and proportion of males and females and proportion of the population that's old enough to have a calf and so on and so forth. So that's the idea, and it seems to work really well. And I wish I'd done it on minke whales because they seem to be even more extreme that way, where you almost never see the calves at all.
So now I guess just people have to get out there in the winter and find some more blue whale calves, see what's happening.
Good luck.
It's kind of hard to figure out how you prove it. If I'm not going to tell people to go and do a bunch of research in places where they won't see very many blue whales, but what if, when we do these satellite tagging studies, a lot of the time they take a little biopsy sample and you could test that for pregnancy. And what if the pregnant females go to different places, or they spread out more if they're about to have a calf? They don't go where everybody else goes. What if, at a time when you think they're giving birth, they suddenly stop swimming and then they swim more slowly? Could you pick up a signal in the satellite tag data? That's one possibility. Yeah. And you could
like if their swimming speeds,
changes,
dropped drastically so that they could have their calf keep up with them. Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I think the cows swim pretty quickly, and they're not.
Relatively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't work, but
I don't know. We've been talking about getting out on a boat and just answering all of these questions. So we'll just put that one on the list.
This one seems hard.
I mean, what I would like, I'll tell you what would be really cool to do would be to take a biopsy of a female and then have some quick test that says, yes, this female is pregnant. It's got all the progesterone very clearly. Let's just follow this female for as long as we can.
See what happens.
And you'd probably have to tag it, so you'd have a satellite tag on it as well, so you wouldn't lose it. And just follow it. And if I'm right, then within a month after they leave the feeding areas, they would give birth. And so all of a sudden, one day you'd be following it, and there'd be a baby next to it.
Yeah.
So then you at least know when that. The problem is to get a decent sample size would be quite difficult.
Yeah, we'd have to do that.
Time consuming. Unless you had a group of, if you wanted to co-author a paper with like 50 other people, and everybody
takes one whale.
Female.
Yeah, everybody adopt a whale.
Yep, adopt a whale and follow it this entire.
Track a blue whale all winter.
Yep.
Yeah, if only there was lots of money for research.
Yeah, right.
If only.
One day in a perfect world. Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we want to take a moment to tell you about how you can support our podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales.
You can join us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/whaletales. You can join for $1 a month at the porpoise level, $5 a month at the dolphin level, or $10 a month at the whale level.
Each level comes with a variety of different perks, including polls, postcards, extra stories, extended interviews, and you can even produce your own fun flipper fact segment of the pod. We also have 2 Patreon exclusive podcasts for our dolphin and whale level patrons. We have a journal club podcast every other-ish month, sort of. It's an evolving schedule, but you know what? It's fine. We keep everybody on their toes. Journal Club's really fun, and this month we have a special Journal Club episode for our patrons focused on interesting orca behavior.
Yes.
Yes, we have lots to say. So if you are a dolphin or whale level patron, join us for that. And if you are or are thinking about becoming a whale level patron, well, do we have a podcast for you? It's called Whale Tales Watches. It's the alternate months when we're not doing Journal Club. We watch a thing or read a thing, and then we rip it to absolute shreds in terms of its biological accuracy, or more usually lack thereof. And I love it, and it makes me so happy.
I know, I'm really excited about the stuff we've got coming up for the rest of the year. It's gonna be interesting.
Yes.
And that podcast, Whale Tales Watches, is our most unhinged.
Yes.
So if you enjoy the flavor of Whale Tales and are looking for an extra shot of that flavor in your life, that's for you.
Yep. This month, we do have an extra story and call to action from Jessica Sportelli, a bioacoustician from the National Marine Mammal Foundation. This swap that we've done comes courtesy of the Shell Phone podcast, which Jessica was just on in June, discussing marine mammal bioacoustics. You can hear this whale tale, "There's belugas," and her call to action over on her Patreon at the $1 a month level, along with other stories, calls to action, and extended interviews. There's lots of fun stuff over there.
So much fun stuff. Thank you so much to our patrons. You are amazing, and we love having your support as we do this crazy Whale Tales thing.
You are incredible. And if you aren't able to support us financially, that is okay too. You are also incredible, and there's lots of things you can do to help us out. For example, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, principally Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but maybe other ones do that. I just don't know, because as listeners know, I am not the tech person of the podcast. But leaving that rating and review really does help other people to find us, so that is extremely helpful to us. Plus, you can tell your other cetacean science podcast loving friends, or in my case, coworkers, because guess who I finally opened up to about the podcast? Hello, coworkers at my new job. so that all of the people in your life who love podcasts, science, or cetaceans can listen to us too.
Yay! You can also follow us on all the social medias, except that one that we don't talk about anymore, at whaletails_org. Plus, you can send us feedback to help us keep making the podcast even better on socials or our website, or you can leave a comment for us on Spotify.
Yay! Trevor, I'm going to lead you into my favorite part of the podcast now, which is we're going to ask you for a fun flipper fact with Trevor. There you go. The song's different every time, and I never know what's going to come out.
Just like a bowhead whale. You're going to work on your jazz.
I'm a bowhead whale. I like that. I'm going to adopt that into my psyche now. But part of the podcast that we're in now, Trevor, is where we get to ask you what is not necessarily your favorite, because that seems to like really add a lot of stress to our guests when they come, but just what is a fun fact about blue whales, or it could be about any cetacean, honestly, that you enjoy sharing, like at a dinner party or with strangers on the bus.
Okay, here's my fun fact.
Excellent.
Blue whales are so big that when they go and feed and they engulf, they get around and find a school of krill, a swarm of krill, and they engulf it, the sort of pleats underneath their mouth widen and they engulf this huge amount of water. The volume of that water that they can engulf, that they can fit in their mouth, is bigger than a humpback whale. An adult humpback whale.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
It's bigger than an adult humpback whale that is itself engulfing a swarm of krill.
That's what we need. We don't need a map of all the blues. We need like the old lady who ate a fly, like a blue whale, and then
like nesting dolls.
Nesting dolls. There we go.
My related fun fact is that even despite them eating tons and tons of krill every day under good circumstances, a blue whale has a throat that's so narrow that they couldn't swallow a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Right? That's nuts.
That's nuts.
Biology is insane.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor, for sharing that fun flipper fact. That is one that I will definitely remember.
I can't even wrap my head around that. Yeah. Blue whales are just like the craziest thing.
But I think that is a good fact because I feel like visualizing the size of a humpback whale is
easier,
a lot more manageable, having seen them. But so then being able to visualize that with a blue whale is bonkers.
Yeah, and then a loaf of bread just
also, that's good news if you ever get engulfed by a blue whale.
By a blue whale.
Get spat out. Just hold your breath.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that will be fine. And not at all
everything will be great. Everything will be great.
Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to leave into my favorite segment, which is, of course, the whale tale. If you would like to share a cetacean encounter, blue whale or otherwise, a memorable encounter that you've had at any point in your life and your research or not in your research, if you're not in front of the computer, please share a story.
Yeah, sure. When I had a sabbatical, which I'm very fortunate to have every now and again, certainly makes it easier to do research if you're not, teaching and doing admin and everything. I went down to Chile, where it's one of the best places in the world to see blue whales. And Barbara Giletti and Elsa Cabrera worked down there, and they have this beautiful spot on the cliff with a more than 180-degree view where blue whales do sometimes come close to shore. And I went down there thinking, well, I'm finally going to maybe have a chance to see blue whales because I do all this this work on computers and analyzing stuff and modeling things and data analysis and meta-analysis and all that stuff. And but you have to understand, this is like in the 40s latitude, and the waves are kind of big offshore of Chiloé Island. And Barbara took me out on the boat, and this boat was open boat, tiny little boat with an outdoor motor and so on. Off we go, and we went for hours and hours and hours, battering through these huge swells and so on. And it was very uncomfortable. We didn't see a single blue whale.
Oh, no.
and I banked on had been there for about a week, and I was like, I'll have all these fun experiences. And then the next few days there were huge swells, and even she didn't want to go out. And then on about day 4, the swells looked just as big and just as dangerous. And I'd been on the boat, and I'd said, why aren't you wearing a life jacket? We capsize, you fall in the water, it's freezing water. She said, well, there's really no point because there's no one out here to rescue us.
Yeah.
So the only reason to wear a life jacket would be so someone can
so
find you.
Reassuring.
Anyway, day 7 dawned, the last day I was going to be there, and it was absolutely flat calm. And she was like, all right, let's go. We'll go out. We'll maybe see some blue whales. And so off we went. Same idea. And we went far away from shore, and we zigzagged backwards and forwards, and there was just nothing. And we saw albatrosses, and we saw all kinds of other things, but no blue whales at all. And I also said, all right, it's time to go back. We turned around, headed back to shore, and boom, there popped up a whole suite of blue whales. There were blue whale spots in the distance. There were blue whales right next to us. Great for photo ID. I've never been so happy in my life.
Oh my gosh. That's so amazing. Was it everything you dreamed of?
It was everything I dreamt of and more.
And more.
Amazing.
They're just, I can't. One day.
Yeah. It's on the list. I mean, they're all on the list, obviously.
They're all on the list, but the ones that are further out get harder.
That's so great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that it, I feel like you earned it by, having to stick through those,
Stick through all
solid 6 days of nothings.
Yeah.
Makes it even more delightful.
And made me appreciate all the people that do these field studies and, decades of taking pictures and matching, humpback flukes, blue whale sides, and IDing individuals from year to year to year, and figuring out where they go and how old they are and how often they give birth and all these things. It's just amazing work that goes into each long-term study, and the wealth of knowledge you get out of it.
Tenacity. The tenacity of some of these projects, and because when they have such long lifespans and complicated life histories, you don't get it in 1 or 2 seasons.
Nothing says marine biology isn't sexy like being seasick while you're trying to get a humpback to fluke, or really a gray whale to fluke, so you can get an idea, or being stuck inside for 4 days because you can't go out on the water because it's too windy, and you're like, it's really boring here in this tiny shack in the middle of nowhere. And you're just like, woo, marine biology, it's so cool. But then you go out and that happens, or I had dolphins bow riding and they jumped over rainbows, and I'm like, okay, fine, it's really awesome out here. Everything's cool.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so fun. Well, we've got one last question that we like to leave our listeners with, which is a call to action, or something that you think that people should do or be more aware of to help them and all of us protect oceans around us.
Well, I would say if you're in the US right now, there's some very clear call to actions, which is that the current administration is, really cutting funding for all kinds of research and all kinds of science. In the US, most marine mammal research and management is done by NOAA. They manage marine mammals, they do all the research. And the latest proposed budget effectively cuts all of the marine mammal research from NOAA and fires almost everybody working on marine mammals. So call your senator or member of Congress and say, this is important to me. I'm interested in whales. I want to find out about them. I want to make sure they're managed well. I want to know how many there are and if they're going up or down, and if we're harming too many of them from ship strikes or fishing gear entanglement. And all those people that decide if that's an issue work for NOAA, and their jobs are on the line. So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
use your voice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add or say about the research of stuff, or anything at all before we wrap it up?
I mean, there's so many cool, interesting research projects that I'm working on, or my students are working on. That keep your eyes peeled. There'll be more cool results coming out in
amazing.
the future. So yeah, there's always fun stuff. So
that's very exciting, and we'll obviously put your social handles in the show notes, because you also do run Blue Whale News, which is how I discovered you back in the days of Twitter, of just learning about cool blue whale things, and then we kind of went from there. Yeah.
So I run Blue Whale News. It's a Blue Sky handle, because the scientists, everybody interested in science, disappeared from Twitter. So most of us moved to Blue Sky. And whenever I read a new paper on blue whales, I post a summary there. So if you want to keep up to date with all the cool research that's being done on blue whales, follow me on that account.
Yeah.
And you can see all the advanced science that I'm doing, because usually as I discover new things, I post stuff there as well.
That's so cool. It's a great way to find more research, which is always something that we're looking for, just to learn more, because as we've learned today, there's so many more things that we don't know about these darn whales. And
I know.
Got to keep going. This was amazing, Trevor. Thank you so much for coming on and just blowing our minds multiple times about which is always what we look for in a guest, about just how I can't stop thinking about so many different things now.
Oh, stop.
And I think also just the depth of knowledge that is out there, and also even though we build up all this knowledge, it just leads to more questions and more opportunities and more excitement about the world around us. So yeah, I think that's always my favorite thing, when we have people who've been doing research for a long time, that they are still so engaged and excited about the new things that come along. So yeah, love it.
I'm excited about the new things, and I'm excited to find out what people did hundreds of years ago.
Yeah,
I'm constantly reading papers that have basically been forgotten, and some of my best ideas have come from really, really old papers.
I was just saying, we have so many more tools and things that we can do to analyze and learn from past papers as well.
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah, one of my most fun papers I did was with an undergrad, trying to figure out. How often do whales have identical twins versus fraternal twins?
And?
So it turns out that when they did whaling, they recorded if a whale was pregnant or not, and they went and looked to see if they had twins inside.
Yeah.
It's kind of grim in that they were killing the whales to get the data.
Yep.
But, okay. Well, if you have identical twins, the one thing you know about identical twins is that both twins are either boys or both twins are girls.
Yeah.
And there are no cases in the database of any of the more complicated, mixed genetics or anything like that. And so if you go and look at the data and all of the twin pregnancies are male-male or female-female, then you know that all of the twins are identical twins. But if you look at the data and they're fraternal twins, they're not identical twins, then the ratio is going to be about 1 to 2 to 1. 1 part male-male, 2 parts male-female, because it could be male-female or female-male, and 1 part female-female. And so if you have the ratio of how many males and females, how many male-male, how many male-female, how many female-female, you can figure out what proportion are identical twins. Because it's some mixture of 1 to 2 to 1 versus 1 to 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And the answer is it's somewhere around a third of pretty identical twins in most whale species.
That's fascinating.
It's a very fun
little mystery
query to analyze.
And that came from a paper I read in 1921.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not even sure why I was reading it, but I read it and I was like, oh, I could do this.
just a rabbit hole. Yeah.
It's just like a little math problem.
Yeah, that's one of the things about whaling. Obviously, it was absolutely horrific, but at least they kept really good notes for us.
They kept really good notes, It's sometimes a bit hard to look at the data and use it, but
yeah,
it is, and the undergraduate student who first authored that paper did a fabulous job and did all the work. And I was like, here's an idea.
Nice.
Good luck. Yeah, go for it. Love it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Okay.
So Ruth Drinkwater. Shout out to Ruth Drinkwater for that paper.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Trevor. This was fantastic.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your time. It was great to chat.
I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Trevor. We would love to hear your thoughts on this or any episode, so please visit our website, whale-tales.org, and find links to all of our social media handles so that you can drop us a line.
You can also head to our website to subscribe to the podcast. You can learn more about supporting us and becoming a patron, and you can check out over 1,500 whale, dolphin, and porpoise stories.
Woo-hoo. That is whale-tales.org. Tales like the story, not tales like the animal.
You can find Trevor on Blue Sky. He is at Trevor A. Branch, like a branch.
Yep.
And on Blue Sky, and also Blue Whale News, all one word, is also on Blue Sky if you want to just find out what's happening in the world of blue whales.
Highly recommend. It's a good follow.
Yeah.
And if you've seen a cetacean, we would love to add your story to our library. You can click the share link on our website, or you can contact us on social media at whaletales_org, or you can email us a voice memo and tell us all about your incredible cetacean encounter.
Finally, we want to acknowledge that we recorded today's episode on unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples and the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Shianu, and Sauk nations.
Thank you everybody so much, and we hope you have a really great day.
Bye.
Bye.